We're getting some very useful advice here. The first bit of advice, although it's not given here, it's my own understanding, is to appreciate the strength of our notions. Our notions have a fetishistic pull. Our notions are contrived, and we have the strongest draw to them. If you think of sexual fetish and consider the power of that, like the power of pornography for example, then our attraction to our notions is as deep as that, if not deeper. So this is what we need to look into, this is what we need to dig into, this is what we need to inquire into and look at. Look at the power of our notions. So this is one supreme good, the non-perception of objects and the non-arising of notions. And the non-perception of objects is also to do with notions. Perception itself is a notion, one that we're very attached to. So attached to that it'll probably seem completely absurd for me to describe it as a notion. And then we can rest peacefully in ourselves. Once we've got a sense of ourself, and once we've realised that our fetishes do not provide ultimate fulfillment, how can they deliver the goods? Then we can rest in ourselves, and we carry on our activities rather like the driver who's driving along a life and death situation, managing a life and death situation, yet whose mind can be actively engaged elsewhere, or engaged wholeheartedly in a conversation with somebody in the next seat. So this is how we rest in the self. But there will be times, perhaps the situation gets a little bit dangerous, that we have to invest more attention into it. The situation is also addressed. Even when the sensation of pleasure arises in contact with the objects, let it lead you inward to the self. So the example here is one of pleasure that's attracting us, not one of anxiety and concern. But it doesn't really matter. In either case, we can still use this as a reminder to be in the self. And this is assuming that the self has no negative connotations for us. If your pain body is still very active, then it's difficult to see the self. You've still got a lot of pain to go through. But if you've got any experience at all of your own awareness, if your awareness has touched itself, then it can be rested in. And that resting of the awareness in itself is one that's free of all negativity. And it's one that we can always come back to. It's like the woman who's got a secret lover, which we heard about previously. It's like we've got this secret lover in our heart, and we can rest there. Do not long for the fruits of action. Do not be inactive either, or be devoted to both, or neither, as it might happen. For it is the will to do or not to do that binds. So how could you be devoted to both? You can give up longings for the fruits of action, but at the same time you make sure you're not inactive. Or you could be devoted to neither. For it is the will to do or not to do that binds, and its absence is liberation. When you've got this sense that something needs to be accomplished, what is that about? It's a feeling again that the present moment is incomplete. Something needs to be achieved. There is something that still needs to be accomplished. And once you realize the completeness that is your inner essence, then you no longer feel that anything needs to be achieved. Which doesn't of course mean that you rest in quiescence. You still get on with things. But you've no longer got that tension which makes you feel you have to accomplish something. There is in fact neither a must nor a must not. All this is pure being. Let your intelligence not recognize any of these. Don't get caught up in any notions whatsoever. This is what our intelligence does. Remain forever what you are in truth. The awareness of I and mine is the root of sorrow. Its cessation is emancipation. These are our greatest fetishes, notions of I and mine. Once we're free of all fetishes, then we're emancipated. And then do what appeals to you. This could be understood in two ways, couldn't it? Do what appeals to you sounds like be self-indulgent. But then an appeal is a crying out. And there's always something crying out that needs to be done. So you do what is being appealed for. Every situation has its own demands. Every situation makes its own appeal. And this is what we get on with.